with me to that. So, I mean, Belinda and I were just talking like how powerful that was. Thank you for sharing that teaching and how it connects. So I want to let her go first.
Okay. Well, hello everyone. It's nice to meet you guys. I'm really excited about being here and doing this. I love an opportunity to contribute to anything that has to do with strengthening our community. One of the things that I'm surprised that Stephen turned it over to me, but he probably noticed, how emotional I became about that particular story and wanted us to stick with that energy. Because really, I wasn't sure about exactly what I wanted to share, but now I'm 100% sure about what that is. And I'm going to start off by saying that I am a formerly incarcerated person, but before I ever saw the inside of a prison, before I was ever behind bars, I felt like I was locked up all my life. I came from poverty. We lived in horrific situations, and we did what we had to do to survive. When you were talking about the guy and the recyclable trash and then the story, it just reminded me of an incident that took place when I was 6 years old and in the first grade, and I'm going to be really quick, and you'll see the relevance to this in a minute. And I was 6 years old, I'm in the first grade, and the teacher asked the question, what did we want to be when we grew up? And, all the kids said firemen and police officers and, nurses that little kids want to be. And all I wanted to be when I was a little kid, I just wanted to be a good girl. And I remember later on that day, my teacher pulling me to the side, asking me why I didn't think I was already a good girl. And of course, in the first grade, I didn't know that answer. I didn't have a clue, but that is something that stuck with me all my life. And, when you come from where I came from, a lot of things happen, from a very little girl, from molestation to even doing drugs by the time I was 6 years old. I had my first experience with drugs, and it was all about surviving in the situation that I was in. And when I ended up getting in trouble and going to prison, for me, it just felt like I was no longer redeemable. I had went to prison. There goes my desire, my wish to be a good girl. So I kind of understood why people didn't want to forgive me, because I was just this horrible person until I went to prison and met some very extraordinary people, other prisoners, who helped me to understand that I was lovable and that I was redeemable. And I set out on that journey. And since I've been home, that's the only thing that I've been trying to do is help other people just like me to understand that they are redeemable. And that's why I love this work that Stephen is doing. I don't know if you guys know Yaakov or not, but they're doing a lot of work to, help people in this community to understand, first of all, if you're not a part of the solution, you're a part of the problem. And, getting, all the money that they put into these prisons trying to turn these, what they consider to be bad people into good people. I've never understood why they didn't just take some of that money and work on helping these sick people to get well. Because that's what I believe that it's really all about. I was at a meeting last night where a lady just made so much sense to me. It's called Breaking Cycles. And what she said was it's very important for us to first connect before we start trying to correct. And to me that said, let's stop throwing all these people in jail and figure out what is the problem? Why are you doing the things that you're doing? What happened to you? I didn't sleep with that guy when I was 14 because I was a slut. I was hungry, and he brought me McDonald's. And, you know, people don't know that about my story, but that I didn't want to. I was hungry. And it's a lot of people, that story is a lot of people's story. You know, so today it made me really emotional, but, you know, to get back on track, I'm very excited about being here. And if, you know, my story can help somebody understand how important it is, you know, to try to work on these bills and get them passed through the system so we can make some changes to this world. Because if we don't all come together collectively and, you know, start loving each other instead of considering all the differences, because we all have problems. You know, some people just end up going to prison. You know, there's a lot of felons that have never been to prison before. But I am very excited about being here and helping to do this work in any kind of way that I can. So thanks.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So from the very first time I met Joy or talked to Joy on the phone, it's always been this dialogue about like, so do we hit people with the head first or the heart first? And I'm a lawyer, and I know I'm talking to people of the book, and yet I'm still convinced that you go with the heart first and the heart last and the book in the middle, the head in the middle. So you know, Belinda's a leader that we're committed to in our office. She's someone that's partnered with, so Yaakov, who was going to be here as well, he's a colleague of mine who also has his own story of, you know, escaping the system. But he is presenting to a bunch of judges today in Ohio who had similar questions to you, like, well, what is this thing about reentry? Why should we give people second chances? So he's telling his story there. But Yaakov, in addition to doing the very specific legal work we do for individual people, is also working with Belinda to start a new program, at least in Cincinnati, to offer more healing to people who've been through just layers upon layers of trauma in their life. And prison is one moment in that, but it's not the whole of it, and it certainly doesn't define who these folks are. That's why we're pushing so hard for something very wonky and specific, which is this TCAP bill, which is in the budget, TCAP, Targeted Community Alternatives for Prison, and the Senate Bill 66. Very specific, particular, lots of exceptions and goofy little details to it, but the heart of it is, you know, Belinda's, you know, story and Yaakov's story and others like them, is allowing for redemption for people who have always deserved redemption and didn't get it at all kinds of stages of their life, and certainly deserve it now. So the TCAP thing would, again, you're gonna get this in a handout that Joy's gonna send to you. And it said the TCAP thing, which is in the budget, basically says anybody with a 5th-degree felony who is receives a sentence of less than 12 months and they have no violence or sex offenses on their record, those people can no longer be sent to state prison. So it's a pretty narrow little slice of people, the lowest level, you know, perceived as the least dangerous people. Those would be about 3,400 people per year that would get diverted if we put this into place. But the crux of how TCAP works is money. So what it says is when someone is prevented from going to state prison because of this new sentencing change, the prison system, DRC, Ohio's Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections, will send to the local county a negotiable rate. It's somewhere between $23 and $33 per day per person that gets diverted. And that money can be used for just about anything. It could be used woefully to expand the jail. It could be used to pay for a new mental health counselor at pretrial services. It could be used to pay for trauma services, all kinds of things. I mean, so more drug treatment for opioid epidemic or other drug addiction. So that's a great thing. I mean, like reducing prison, sending more money from the state back to local communities seems like slam dunk. However, there is a unified bank of opposition against this from the county commissioners, county sheriffs, county prosecutors, county clerks of courts. There's about every county level official who has a statewide association, like the State County Commissioners Association of Ohio, that kind of thing. All those associations are kind of locking ranks because they say it's not enough money and you're going to crowd or overcrowded jails. That is baloney, and we should call it that. I don't know if there's a Yiddish word for that. I know the English word for it. Yes. But that is baloney for a couple reasons. One, people who are this incredibly small class of people, a 5th degree, which is the lowest degree of felony, less than 12 months, no violence or sex in their history. Those folks don't belong in jail either. They do belong perhaps in a job program or a mental health treatment program or a drug treatment program or a fatherhood program or some combination of these things. Parenting assistance thing. Maybe they need help with housing. I mean, whatever it is, like we could invest in productive, health-inducing, supportive things that would cost way less than jail and be way more productive in terms of reducing recidivism. So when a local official says that's not enough money to house somebody in jail, you say that's right, so put them there. The other reason is when people say our local jails are overcrowded, that's ridiculous because between like 40, maybe upwards of 60% of some jails are holding people pre-trial. These are people who are not found guilty yet, who are being held on money bail. They're too poor to make bail, and so poor people are incarcerated, and thereby sort of their arm is twisted into pleading guilty to something they may not be guilty of at all because they have to get back to their family and their job. So now bail reform isn't in here, and I know Rabbi Caruso knows about bail reform because there's some of that going on in Cleveland. But bail reform, though not in these bills, is sort of the elephant in the room that needs to be raised, is like, stop locking up people in your local jail who don't belong there. All right, so that's TCAP. Senate Bill 6, and you'll see that the mechanism in the TCAP program restricts judicial discretion. So judges cannot send a certain group of people to prison. Senate Bill 66 is everything that expands judicial discretion. That's positive. So it gives a big, and I'll list these out. So one of the things relates to probation. 23% of people going into prison every year in Ohio, about 4,700 people a year, are going in because of probation revocations that are not new felonies. That means these are people who did commit a felony, were committed to probation, they violated some rule, they had a dirty urine, or they missed an appointment, or they didn't complete a job program, or whatever, and the judge says, forget you, I'm throwing you in prison. The minimum sentence when a judge does that, when a judge yanks somebody out of probation, is 1 year in prison, which is really extreme. I mean, that's like dropping a hammer on someone's life. Even a year in prison just destroys people's community connections. So what this bill does is it gives judge more discretion to do less. You can keep him in jail for a weekend. You can do other things, but you don't have to send him to prison for a year. Other thing, it expands judicial discretion for treatment in lieu of conviction, and it expands judicial discretion to seal more kinds of criminal records. So people who want to get back on their feet, have a better chance in the job market. There's a couple other little things in there, but that's Senate Bill 66. So Senate Bill 66 not getting opposition from the county commissioners, sheriffs, judges, prosecutors, etc., because it's more flexible and more about discretion, and less about you shall not send these people to prison. But those are the two, but they really fit together. Those two things really fit together, and both of them, I will say, were designed by and championed by our prison system. Our prison director, Gary Moore, is the one who, his team developed both of these bills together as a set. It was his leading, flagship ideas to, shrink the prison population. So any questions about the content of the bills or anything like that?
I think that was really helpful, Stephen. Thank you. We were able to wrap our heads around it. Could you give us a quick timeline, about where Senate Bill 66 is right now in the system?
Yes.
you know, when it be resolved?
Okay, so the budget part, which is TCAP, that part is got a hard timeline on it because it's part of the budget. So it has to be passed by June 30th. It has already been passed by the House, and it got watered down. So even all the little bullet points I gave you about that bill, it's actually been watered down, and there's this exception to the exception. I won't go into all of it right now. It's in the Senate, and there's a reason why my handout says, call your state senator. Because the budget is already in the Senate, and then, of course, Senate Bill 66, it's still in the Senate. Senate Bill 66 does not have a hard timeline on it. It has had a few support hearings. And I will say, I want to bring up one thing in particular. So, Rabbi Caruso, who else on this call was part of your team that went?
Yeah, Melinda Mersak, Allison Van, and Josh Brown.
Excellent. So you should know, there's this outside thing from DC called the U.S. Justice Action Network. And it's this interesting thing, big national effort. They're operating in 11 states, and it's like funded by the Koch brothers, but also by Ford Foundation. The NAACP is involved. So it's like all these like right, left, unlikely unlikely allies. And together, they have this national initiative to support smart on crime reform in the states. So they've picked Ohio as one of theirs, and they've picked this bill, Senate Bill 66 and TCAP together as one of their leading things. So they had this big hoopla last week. They had Director Moore, the director of the prison system, on stage, and it was supposed to be for legislators. It was at the State House. They had, food and wine and all this stuff, and they had Maurice Clarett. People know Maurice Clarett? Yes, come on, start shaking your heads. Ohio State, OH.
IO.
Oh, hey, thank you. Okay, go Bucks. And I went to Penn State. I mean, come on.
Right.
So.
There you
go. I know. That's well done. Awesome. So Maurice Clarett, famous for both being an amazing running back as a freshman and then flaming out and getting himself locked up in Toledo Correctional, was on stage talking about why, and much like Belinda's story, it was really powerful. I mean, there was not many dry eyes in the audience, sharing about like how he needed to go to prison to meet this amazing, well, in his case, he said it was the warden who kind of gave him this transformative view of who he was. And he got more aware of his own depression and, trauma he endured in his past and how that connected to where he was living, what he was doing. So he spoke about that. They talked about these bills. But in that event, Senator John Eklund from Geauga County, outside of Cleveland, who is probably our biggest ally already in the Senate on this stuff, John Eklund got up to say, all the reasons why he supports this bill. And he's like, and you know what? These rabbis came to meet me. Like, can you imagine? Like, wow. It was the most amazing thing. Like, I was very surprised that they came into my office. And I was like, why are you interested in this? And, like, I'm so appreciative to have such a diverse group of people in Ohio that care about this. So I just wanted to say you guys, got a shout out from the stage at this great, legislative event.
That's awesome. And I'll tell you, it was great to hear that because we were jazzed to meet with the senator. It truly meant picking up the phone, speaking to his staffer, and saying, we'd like to meet with Senator Eklund. We understand we're in Cleveland, we're about 40 minutes out from Chardon, but we're willing to meet him, go where he is. And it happened a couple of weeks later. And he is a co-sponsor of the bill with the Democrats. He's a Republican, co-sponsor with the Democrats. This is a bipartisan effort. And he not only was impressed with us, which is fine. I mean, the more important thing is we want to move this bill forward. And part of that, we asked how we could do that. And there were lots of ways in which he suggested we could move this forward, including perhaps even giving testimony in Columbus as a body. A few of us from Reform Ohio really testified to the importance of passage of this bill in the Senate, so then it could go to the House. So I'd like to move forward now. Because Sissy is going to sort of move us into action mode and help us think about how we, as a body, this really new initiative of Reform Ohio can actually work towards pushing this bill through. So I want to thank Stephen and Belinda hope you hang on because we're really going to talk about next steps for helping fill us in. Sissy?
So I hope everybody understands that we're really at a point where we're at a critical place, at a critical time to make a real difference in our state. And there's a couple different ways, maybe more than two, but there's two different things out there. And this is our call. You know, we are hearing the shofar calling to us and asking us to jump in. And there's two things that are, as you heard, there's this budget part of the criminal justice reform called TCAP, which you can understand more when we get the two-pager that Stephen has held up for, but you'll get to get up close and personal with it soon. And the other part is this SB 66. So here we have a menu of options, really, of which we can partake of ways to get involved. And I want to hear from you what you have the appetite to jump in and do. So the budget piece of this will happen between now and June 30th, from what I understand, that the budget will have to be passed by then. During this time, just to be clear, for a lot of this time, our dear Joy will be getting married and on her honeymoon, so she won't be able to be with us on this journey from May 24th to June 19th. And Lindsay is going to be ordained, so she won't be back with us full-time until June 16th. But I came up with the solution just by having a child 24 years ago of Jacob Kraus, who is on the call, and who has been working for the past year on racial injustice for the RAC, and critical to that is the criminal justice reform, which he has a great deal of understanding about. And he is on call to help us through this period of time through June 30th. So what is it that what is among the things that we might do between now and June 30th? We can have meetings with our local senators and or have a call-in day that we might all call in on the same day. But if you choose to meet with your local senator between now and June 30th, that would include calling your senator's office to set up the meeting, recruiting colleagues, setting up a prep call, which Jacob would be on to help you through that, and having the meeting, and then debriefing the meeting. Jacob would help you through all of those things. And he's pretty nice person to deal with. So we also would really love to have a lobby day for SB 66 and whatever the House bill is going to be called. This probably won't happen before June 30th. So we're thinking about late summer, early fall, that we could all convene together in Columbus to lobby our representatives. And we would love to really think about, hear from you what your appetite is about these things. And as well, we're hoping that maybe some of you might be willing to spend the time to build some more, to build our core team, to bring more people into the center, and that you might have the appetite to have these conversations with some of our colleagues who aren't on today's call, or haven't yet gotten involved, or have been involved at some point and we haven't seen them for a while, and to get them on board for future action. Did I miss anything, Joy?
I don't think so. I was just thinking it might be helpful to go back and clarify exactly what we're thinking, that the three options. Well, really the three options. Oh, Josh, go for it.
Oh, that's Stephen.
Oh,
chatting.
Stephen, sorry.
I just wanted to throw in a couple things. Those were great. And I just want to suggest to Lindsay and or Rabbi Caruso, since you made that first touch with Senator Eklund, maybe this is already on your radar screen, but to stay in touch with him and ask, like, suggest him that you might do this advocacy, and so he will update you on exactly when would be strategic for you to come to Columbus. Like, you can work directly with his office to plan that out. We did that on another bill, and he was very receptive to, like, actually, because he's the sponsor of the bill. He wants to see it passed. He likes working with the proponent testimony, citizens that want to show up, and he likes to kind of choreograph, not completely choreograph it, but, like, help get those people connected at the right time and place. So please do that. And the second thing I want to add is because, remember what I was saying, a lot of opposition is coming from local county officials. That means it's an opportunity to, for example, do work with your county commissioners and give them a call and say, hey, I understand commissioners are really upset about this bill, but we need it. It's for safety. It's for our values, all the reasons why you might advocate for it. Please, county commissioners, stop being obstructionist.
Gotcha.
I have just a couple of comments. Can you all hear me? One is that I was very moved, Allison, by the text you shared, and yet I want to suggest that on whatever plane of action we take now as Reform Ohio, we come up with very clear and distinct prophetic imagery that's consistent. We're creating a formative action for Reform Ohio, and we want the members of our congregations, our movement internally, and for the powers that be involved in the criminal justice system to know who we are and not to have to struggle to remember what we're about. So that, for example, the text you shared, Allison, made me think of God being willing to not punish the Israelites for the crime of the golden calf. He did not. Divine forgiveness that we are trying to imitate is not about pretending that someone did not do wrong. It's about averting the severity of the law. It's about allowing that there's some discretion. That's what I was thinking here. You have that. You were talking about judicial discretion. You're talking about prosecutorial discretion, and that's what we're calling for here. That's a kind of I'm not saying we have to use that, but that's a kind of a more universally recognized text than a more rabbinic story. So I'm just thinking out loud that our prophetic messaging doesn't have to be precisely synchronized, but we have to be careful about this as a formative action for Reform Ohio, so people know what we stand for here prophetically. That's our tool of power, and that's why it moved Eklund so much that rabbis came to him. I want to mention that in terms of our organization building. And then secondarily, what I'd be willing to offer into this is that I have a strong relationship with our county prosecutor. And I have a meeting scheduled with them later this month on matters of GCC, our local community organized effort, Interfaith. But I could potentially use that as a date to ask his willingness to meet with us about this, about some of the matters legislatively. Great.
So that's great. There's obviously a lot of other things that we can do, things that weren't on the list of things that I went over, and we want to hear about those things that you're willing to do as well. But I really would like to, we want to know what your appetite is for either calling in or meeting with senators before June 30th about TCAP, a lobby day in the late summer, early fall, and helping to build our core team. And we also want to, note that in addition to the meeting that was in Cleveland with Eklund, that the other co-sponsor, that our group in Columbus met with him.
I'd be all in for a Columbus gathering, assuming the date works. I think it's best I'm sitting here with 3 colleagues. I think it's best to utilize other of my colleagues' calendars between here and June 30th to guard it. But if a date was available that I was available to meet with a state senator, I'd be in for that too.
Yeah, I think we all are. Right?
Yeah, it all sounds
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're all in. Cleveland's all in.
I'm happy to be in touch with Armin Budish. He's not one of our best friends at the moment, but maybe I still have some credibility. Or not, I don't know.
Sure, absolutely. And I think, Sissy's putting it out to you. We've done a lot of talking and we've had our agenda. And Cleveland is all in, but we also want to hear from you all and to see, just what's your reaction so far.
We really want to hear how you're moved to act and how you're moved in both heart and head.
And I think have time for questions too. I think before we actually wanted to close with having each person share for 30 seconds or so about what of the next steps sounds good to you and what you're ready to take on. And before we do that, we actually have just been joined by Julie Sachs-Taller, who's a rabbi in San Francisco, who's been a part of Reform California, the other statewide organizing project of the Reform movement that we've based a lot of our work on, and has just, that effort has just done 2 consecutive campaigns. And I think Julie's congregation actually did another around statewide criminal justice reform. So let's use some minutes now to ask questions about the next steps or to share some excitement. Then we'll hear from Julie, then we'll do the rounds. So are there any remaining questions?
I have a question. It's Sarah Sager. I was on the phone at the beginning. It sounded like the Ohio Bill 66. It has a lot of support. I'd be curious to know how much resistance there actually is to it, or did I miss that somehow?
I was wondering that too.
Yeah. Because if there's generalized support, that's a different kind of involvement we would have than if we really feel like it's an uphill battle.
Stephen, can you talk about that?
Yes.
Please?
Yeah. And as I was talking, and you'll see in the handout that Joy sends around, there's these 2 pieces that really need to be linked together. The Senate Bill 66, which expands judicial discretion and has got less opposition, and then the budget bill, which restricts judicial discretion to prevent them from sending people to prison, that has more opposition. The idea is to conceptually link these 2 together, really in the minds of our legislators and genuinely from our own hearts and our values, why we're about this work. These 2 things go together. We really don't want one without the other. So you are right that Senate Bill 66 has got a warm reception. We want to sort of hitch the wagon on with the TCAP thing that's in the budget.
I understand hitching something on, but if it means that we lose both, is that strategically the best way to go?
We're not going to lose both. The House bill, the budget bill, is going to pass first anyway, and then the budget bill is going to it has already got this concept in it from the House. It's just a matter of how strong it's going to be. We feel very confident that some version will pass. It's just a matter of how strong. And so they need to hear from people of faith, like, this is why this matters to us, make it as strong as possible.
Yeah, I think in terms of what Stephen just said, I'm looking at a list of criteria that we used when we first started talking about building Reform Ohio and what we might work on. We talked about a couple criteria that we thought made a lot of sense. Like, could we ground it in Jewish text and tradition? Would it help a lot of people and lead to greater equality and justice in the state? Is it winnable? Is there a political window open with an identifiable specific target who can be moved? And I think these 2 pieces of legislation, the budget element and the Senate bill, fit that criteria. The budget, of course, is really time sensitive by the end of June. And that, I think, for our sake, may be, it's awesome to hear that the folks in Cleveland think you could even go to Columbus potentially before then. We thought Senate meetings made a lot of sense between now and then to establish a relationship with your senator, if you don't have one already, and to talk to them about both the budget, which is so timely, and the Senate bill, and perhaps do a lobby day in Columbus in the fall. We have a little more time to plan it when Lindsay will have been on full time for a while, when you all might be able to fit it into your calendars, or late summer before the craze of the High Holy Days.
So, so I'd like to hear from some others and to really go around and really have you, say what moves you. If you're not moved, what might? I'll start calling on people.
Do we want Julie to share a little bit first, or do we want to do this first and hear from people?
If you don't mind, I'd like to finish this because there's a bunch of people we haven't yet heard from. That's okay. Karen?
Sure, please. Thank you for calling on me. First of all, this has just been a very important and terrific call. And so just thank you to everyone. And I absolutely put my hat in the ring for the lobby day. And I just wanted to say out loud that in addition, I would love some resources as it got closer to really preparing for that mode. It's just been a little bit of time for me since I've lobbied in person. So I'm committed to learning, and I'm also committed to doing it. And I'm also volunteering to carpool. Anyone who wants from Cincinnati, I'm more than happy to drive. I enjoy it. And thank you again.
I'm wondering, I'm going to do a quick insertion and just say, I'm not sure how much other people had done these meetings, but I know Sissy mentioned that in addition to Senator Eklund, one of the two primary sponsors of the bill, the folks in the Columbus area, Benji, Sharon, and Rick Kellner, went to meet with the other co-sponsor, Charletta Tavares, and Sissy, who brought us to prison, who's been doing justice work for some time, had not done a meeting like that ever before.
Sharon, you mean?
Sharon had never done a meeting like that before in her career. She'd never met with a senator before, which I didn't even know until I saw her at consultation. And I think, Rick, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you guys had a great meeting. And not only kind of exercised new rabbinic muscles, but had an impact. And she was offered to give us a list of who she thought would need to support the Senate bill when it goes to the House, and to be our ally. So just because you haven't done it before should not be an impediment to doing it now.
And we will support you the whole way. Part of the process is really just having a call with all of us, deciding who is going to say what in the meeting, and going in with a really clear role of what every person's going to play, so you feel prepared going in.
We did, yeah. That's great.
Is there anybody else that wants to weigh in? Melinda, you're on my screen twice.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, it took me a minute to unmute myself. So I'm up for pretty much anything that I am able to do. I'm happy to, participate. Since I was with the group that visited Senator Eklund, I'm happy to follow up with him. He had some real great suggestions for how we can help move things forward. So I'm happy to do that, and to, meet with whomever, my own senator, state senator, or, whatever seems to be the most effective next steps, with the caveat that my son's bar mitzvah is June 17th. But other than that, I am happy to do whatever I can.
Mazel tov.
Anybody else want to jump in? So, so as we close this part, what I think that beyond the fact that we could move something important through, is that I feel it's really important that we add a Jewish voice to these kinds of concerns. Last fall, or maybe it was even a year and a half ago, we had some meetings with our then state senator, and she said, "Oh, you guys are really well connected in the State House, getting things like school vouchers." And I said, "Well, that's a different kind of initiative from a different kind of community." And so I'm really energized that we're around the values that we hold true, and the values of taking care of our community, our state, and the people who live in it.
Great. Thank you, Sissy. This statewide model is, as you can tell, is catching on. And as Joy mentioned earlier in the call, we're looking at other states now. There's a lot of colleagues who are saying, hey, wait a minute, we want to do Reform New York. Hey, wait a minute, we haven't heard anybody say we want to do Reform South Carolina, South Dakota, or anything like that yet. But it's definitely a model that seems very workable in a nice companion with our national work towards criminal justice reform. And the first model that really came out for statewide movemental effort was to reform California. When Stephanie Colin, our colleague who's now at Central Synagogue, went out and as an organizer helped bring the North and the South together. Not Civil War, North and South, but certainly two different cultures of California, and bringing colleagues together to do some really important work. And now we continue on. They now have two organizers there, one in the Northern California, one in Southern California. Our colleague, Rabbi Julie Sachs-Thaler of Congregation Sherry Israel, is in San Francisco. She's been a leader, as Joy mentioned, in Reform California. And she wanted to share a little bit of her work, and maybe that just gives us an opportunity to imagine, what it can look like for us, seeing the kind of work that Reform California is doing. Julie?
Thank you so much, Josh, and it's great to see you all. And, we've actually been hearing for a while that Ohio would probably be next. So we're right behind you and really excited. And I think it's so important. It's really important for you to be next, obviously, for so many reasons. So I'm excited to hear that you're doing this, and sorry for coming in at the end rather than earlier. I thought I would talk a little bit about our process at my congregation of not just community organizing, but working particularly on criminal justice reform. So as with so much of the country, for many of us, our consciousness was raised around Ferguson and the beginning of Black Lives Matter, and people felt just really galvanized and upset and wanted to do things, wanted to take action. And at the same time, I think a lot of us felt somewhat timid, unclear of what's our place as a Jewish community and not as a community as obviously or directly impacted. We are diverse communities, but we're not mostly Black communities. We're not mostly people of color communities. So as angry, as incensed, and as ready to act as we were in some ways, we also really needed to find a way in that felt honest. And honest toward other people, honest toward ourselves. And I've been thinking back to what, because we've really come a long way since then, and we've worked on two major campaigns, and we've built relationships. So I've been thinking back, how did we get here? How did we do that? And it's helpful to do that as we try to think about what's our next step as well. But I would say a couple things really helped us. One was to do some reading. And so maybe many or all of you have read The New Jim Crow, have read Just Mercy. We read both of those books, but rather than just sending people out to read them, we had a little reading group. So I had 6 people coming to my office to whom I was accountable, that I had to read the 2 chapters we had assigned ourselves. And I don't know about the rest of you who are nodding and who've read the book, but I know I would not have read the whole book if I didn't actually have to sit down and talk about it with people. It was too, in some ways, dense, but mostly so upsetting.
And repetitive.
Yes, it was repetitive, but I actually think that each chapter, that's great, but each chapter seemed to unpeel another part of the onion. And there was another level of something to be truly outraged by. By the end of the book, she actually really waxes sermonic and changes tone. And it's no longer just information, but it's actually a sermon about what we need to do to build a movement that will go somewhere. So that's just we could spend a long time on the book. But doing some reading, I think, helped us feel our own outrage at being lied to and duped on such a deep level. So that was helpful for us. And then the other thing was to build relationships over time doing a couple of campaigns with our local interfaith broad-based organization, and having relationships and hearing the testimony of people, very personal testimony of people who were directly impacted, and then building relationships with them has made us feel like, well, if something is my friend's issue, then it's my issue. And having made some of those real friends, we can now say that in a way that we couldn't before. So those are a couple of things that have made a difference for us. And the other thing is to see what happened. There's some noise on the line there. I'd say the other thing is to see what happened when we went to meet with our representatives and when we went to meet with people at some churches when they saw that we showed up as Jews. So I think Sissy was just saying.
Somebody's typing on the other line. Could you mute yourself if you're the one who's typing? We love
I
you.
just need a little muting. I did it myself.
Thank you. Go ahead, Julie.
I think the last thing is to say, just to see what happens when we show up as Jews in our representative's office and we say what issues mean for us as Jews, and they look at us and say, wait, you guys are here on criminal justice reform? And we say why that matters to us. And we do that through bringing Jewish text and telling our stories. And we really play up how many people are in our congregations and how many people we represent. And we let them know we're going to be there on this issue repeatedly. That has not only seemed to make a difference to our representatives, but we've then looked at each other and been able to say, just what some of you were just saying a few minutes ago, it really does matter when we show up as Jews. It matters for the issues, and it matters because we need people to know who Jews are, not only the Jews who are trying to get vouchers for a private school. We need them to know us as Jewish community. So my congregation now has a relationship with a mostly Black and Latino church with whom there's some churches we can build relationships with, and they've already done lots of work in coalition with lots of other communities before. We happen to now have really finally found a church where we're going to get to do a lot of that groundwork for the first time. And that's exciting, actually, to see that there's work to do and we're in the relationships where we can do it. Maybe I'll stop there.
Thank
Julie.
you so much.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I know, Joy, you're going to take over. I was just going to say that it's really great examples of the different ways we can use our muscles. In some ways, just politically, meeting with our House representatives and state senators, using muscles that we haven't used before in a while, but also using muscles about having relationships with our faith communities nearby, and having relationships with our communities internally in our congregations, talking about things that we would never talk about, like reading a book together that is not a typical Jewish book. So, Julie, thank you for helping to fill in that piece.
My
Joy.
pleasure.
So I'm going to step in, and I think right before we kind of close and celebrate what we've learned and the people we've met, we're going to do an accountability round. So one of the fundamental parts of relationships, of being part of a collective effort, is what Julie and Josh just spoke to. It's being accountable to each other. And that is true about our alliances and partnerships across lines of difference. If we say we're going to show up around an issue, if people say to us they're going to show up around an issue, we need to mean it. And for internally with each other, if we're going to try to do something, can we be the kind of team of clergy across the state and a partner across the country who will support what we say we'll support and do what we say we'll do? That's how we know we can be an effective effort. So I want to go back to the list of questions Sissy suggested, list of actions, which is to meet with a state senator. There are 33 of them. So you can meet with the person who represents you. You can meet with somebody like what they did in Columbus and what you all did near Cleveland. Not everyone was represented by the person they met with, but they did it together to demonstrate their strength. And some of their congregants were in some of the person's district. So they knew it was not a total long shot. But there are also senators who represent the entirety of the state. So step one, could you meet with a senator with some of your colleagues between now and the end of the month? Either join another person's meeting or be the lead on a meeting. 2, are you interested in and could you help make a lobby day in late summer, early fall? And 3, could you invite Lindsay in to be a partner with you to do a core team effort building in your congregation or something else? Well, let's add a 4th, something else. Those are the 3 things. And I'm going to go in this order because I know some people have to get off early. So I know Rick has to get off early. So I'm going to go with Rick first. Then there's some clergy teams. So let's go to Cincinnati and have Sissy and Meredith. And then Michael, Alana, Karen, Lewis. Then we'll go to just right outside Cincinnati and have Karen and Tina speak. Then we'll go up in the state. We'll go to Allison, back to Melinda, and then end with the Fairmount folks. So Rick, Sissy and Meredith, Michael, Alana, Karen, Lewis, Karen and Tina, Allison, Melinda, and Fairmount. Rick?
So I am planning to reach out to my state senator to see if I can arrange a meeting, and I may try to bring at least one congregant with me who I know this is a passionate cause for him. I am more than willing to host everyone for a pre-meeting or whatever needs to happen at a lobby day in Columbus. Hopefully we can schedule that sooner than later. Basically the answer is yes to all of the above. The other thing I'm thinking about is in anticipation of the House, hopefully just passing the Senate and to the House is really working on something for slichot within the congregation. And then just one other side comment. If you haven't seen the documentary film, I think it's called 13th. It is all about criminal justice reform. It is only available on Netflix, and so I highly recommend it. It's an hour and a half. It's in many ways very similar to the book, The New Jim Crow. So, but really will take a lot less of your investment time and was very, very powerful.
Awesome. Thank you, Rick. You don't even have to watch 13th alone. That could be something you do with congregants or with each other.
Yeah, that's true.
So let's go to Sissy and Meredith.
You there, Meredith?
No, I need her.
So I think I would love to gather our group together and to feel that Hevra and to have a lobby day together. I'm also already in the process of setting up a meeting with Cecil Thomas. So any of the Cincinnati folks that want to come with me to see my state senator, I'd enjoy their company if I could get a response from them, or if one of you could get a response from them in a better way, that would be also good. And I'm really proud that at Rockdale we had our first core team meeting for our we don't have a name for it yet, but it's right now we're calling it the Justice League. And so I'm looking forward to having Lindsay help me build that group up as part of this effort too.
Cool. Awesome.
Meredith, did you have anything to add? I think she must have walked away from her desk.
Thank you. Thank you, Sissy, and on your and Meredith's behalf. Let's go to the next rabbinic team in that area. Michael, Alana, Karen. I think Karen has hopped off, but she already got to contribute a little bit. Do you have input, thoughts about what you're up for?
From my end, happy to join in, Sissy, in a meeting with Cecil Thomas or Lou Terhar, and I know we have some senators who are there. They are, both of those two are co-sponsors of 66, but I don't know where they stand on TCAP. So finding out how we find that out, and I think just huddling up as a Cincy group and seeing how we can have some strength in numbers and strength in connections.
Great. You may be able to see here, but Stephen is saying meet with Senator Terhar. So I think Cecil Thomas is great to have as an ally, He's not one of the primary sponsors, but he's one of the 5 co-sponsors of Senate Bill 66. But Terhar and Uker. That sounds great. Uker.
Eaker is actually how you pronounce it. It's a funny name, but he's like east side of Cincinnati, east side of Hamilton County.
Great. Alana, do you want to weigh in as well?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I still don't know how to use my phone. I totally agree. I'm happy to join in on whether it's a lobby day in Columbus or local meetings here. Happy to be part of anything that I can.
Awesome. I see Karen Bodney-Halaz has written to all of us and that she may not be able to speak. I don't know if Tina can speak, but it looks like
I can speak.
Great. Go for it, Tina. You can. Your voice is heard.
So I will second Karen's. I'm interested in all 3. This is not necessarily an area of the Rabbinate that I have a whole lot of experience in, but I look forward to being involved with this group and the guidance and the learning that will come from working with all of you.
Awesome. And it looks like Karen even added that she could set up meetings with county commissioners. So she's going above and beyond. Thank you to you both. Allison Van.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm interested in the lobby day in the late summer, early fall. I think it's important for us to be together. And after coming off of the consultation on conscience, my members who were there are very interested in preparing to begin a core team in the congregation.
Awesome. And actually, I want to hop back to the southern part of the state. Ofer is on, and I'm not going to let him off the hook either. Ofer, what are you comfortable being held accountable to?
Hi, I'm here. It's a little difficult for me to speak now because of driving, but I'll be happy to help with anything.
Great. We heard it here. Anything. Take you up on it. Thank you. Melinda, you've already shared, but do you want to contribute any more words of wisdom or insight or accountability?
I don't think I have much to add. Yeah, I'm up for all of it.
Awesome. All right, Fairmount.
So we were just talking about how we want to start meeting with our state senators. We're also very excited about some sort of lobby day, and we're definitely feeling like we're all in. What I've been thinking about is that many of us were just at consultation on the conscious, and Piper Kerman was talking a lot about how one thing we should do is make sure that we hear stories. Like, we shouldn't talk about people who have been incarcerated, but we should talk to them and with them. And I think hearing the story today was very powerful and a good reminder of how important it is to make sure that other people are involved in this conversation as well.
Yes, she powerfully, I believe her phrasing was, if you're no advocacy about us without us.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that gives us a special, I don't know if she's still with Stephen, but Belinda, I believe, took off work. It's just you had to lose wages to spend time being with us, which is a huge sacrifice on her part and really important, I think, for our work.
Yeah, well, she did. It was her lunch hour, but yes, she did take off time to be with us. And yes, thank you for lifting that up, Joy. I'm glad you said that.
Yes.
Rob Nosenchuk had to leave, but don't forget, we'll circle back on the county prosecutor piece.
Great.
Cuyahoga County.
Great. So I'm not sure how familiar we all are with the practice we just did of going around and sharing a piece of accountability. And I think we have, from the spectrum of I will do X, like I think we heard that there are meetings that are going to happen, to I'll do what I can. I think that's part of what it takes to be a community of accountability, is to share what we are honestly feeling, what we're honestly up for, and to get an out when we need one, like when we're having a family event, like I am having or Melinda's having, or when it's just not the right time for us. And that the truth is, even with Lindsay on board, full time. I think she was going to add an invaluable addition. This will only succeed to get the 30 plus congregations across the state to really contribute and leverage what power you each have in your communities toward making a more just state if you do the work. It's not something what a professional does for you. It's something you do. And I think one of the most exciting parts of the meetings that happened in the two parts of the state over the last month, for me as the professional that spends my time with so many volunteers, was he had to hop off, but Josh Brown, who messaged me that he's willing to do whatever is needed, said this is what he wanted to do with his rabbinate after the meeting you guys had with Eklund. So not only did it speak enough to Eklund that he spoke about it when he was at this meeting that Stephen spoke about, so the big funders heard him talk about this diverse group, including rabbis who spent their time with him. But so too, I think for our rabbis, it's the opportunity to be accountable to each other and to the part of your rabbinate that makes the world a more just place. I don't remember, Allison, exactly what the phrase was from the tech study, but that work, I think that holy work of chesed is a meaningful way, I hope, for each of you to be in your rabbinates and with each other.
Not being someone with ready access to those materials, could you send me that story, whatever that page was?
Sure.
That? And that wasn't the Torah. What was that? What was that from?
It's from a text. We can actually send you the whole packet. It's from Truah, which is a social justice organization, rabbinic organization. And so I didn't find the text. I can't take credit for it. And it's from Rabbi Yom Tov Ishbili of Spain from 1250. He lived from 1250 to 1330. It's an amazing text, and you can read it and read it and read it and read it and find more and more and more and more in it.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Sissy just held up the larger handbook this came from. It's online. So
Yeah.
I can send out links.
We can send you the
afterwards.
whole link if you want, Stephen.
Yeah.
It's an amazing handbook.
And send it to everyone.
If that could be circulated, that's great.
Everybody.
Yeah, for sure. Joy, do you want me to, or is Rick still here?
It looks like Rick is back, but we know he had to meet with his daughters. Speaking.
I'm here. I'm here.
Go for it, Rick.
I'm here.
Go, go, go.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I want to first thank everybody for being a part of our call today. It is wonderful to have been able to connect with all of you. I think we have heard incredible stories, incredible teaching, and personally, I feel very motivated to be able to move this forward. I think, we all wholeheartedly believe in the opportunities for Tikkun Olam. And this is an opportunity for real change in our state, and for an opportunity for us to make the lives of our community, our neighbors, and better. And so I hope that we are able to connect in person in a few months in Columbus to really continue this effort to make change. And thank you to all who have been involved in making the call possible. And to Lindsay, we're very excited to be able to work with you and learn from you and be led by you here in Ohio.
Amen.
So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Mazel tov, Joy, on your upcoming wedding, and Mazel tov.
Mazel tov with Simon Tov.
Yes, Mazel tov.
Thank you. And to Lindsay on our upcoming ordination, to Melinda on our upcoming bar mitzvah, and to all of you on what hopefully will be a win for criminal justice reform in Ohio.
Amen.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.